Maria Luisa was born on May 29, 1977, in La Fortuna de San Carlos, Costa Rica. She was the youngest of 5 children in her family. She graduated from high school in 1994. Maria Luisa was a diligent student who dreamed of becoming the first member of her family to receive a university diploma. Determined to succeed in life, she decided to study medicine. Maria Luisa graduated from the medical faculty at the University in San Jose. She received master's degrees in anesthesiology and rehabilitation and surgical medicine. Maria Luisa worked as an anesthesiologist and was a well-known specialist in this field of medicine. Many people who devote their lives to building a successful career do not have time for a personal life. Maria Luisa was one of those people. She dated a doctor she met while studying at university. However, their relationship did not last long. In February 2020, they broke up, and this caused her depression. The restrictions imposed everywhere due to the virus spreading around the globe further aggravated the situation. Maria Luisa wanted to take a little break from all the problems and decided to spend the weekend in some quiet place on the coast. She booked a room at La Mansion Inn in Quepos, Punta Arenas. Her room was on the ground floor and had 2 entrances. One entrance was from the hotel's lobby, and the second allowed access to the courtyard. Maria Luisa chose this room because she was with her beloved dog. She checked into the room on Saturday, July 18, 2020, and was supposed to leave the hotel on Monday, July 20th. Everything went as the woman planned. She checked in at her hotel room on July 18th. The next day, she had a good time on the beach with her dog. Then, she walked through the local streets and took photos, which she shared with her loved ones. In the evening, Maria Luisa ordered a bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and water to her room. On Monday, July 20th, she had to have breakfast and go to San Jose for work. Yet, she didn't come to breakfast scheduled for 8 a.m. The hotel staff thought she had just decided to sleep in, and therefore did not bother her. But when a few more hours passed and Maria Luisa still didn't appear, the staff became worried. At about 12 p.m., the maid started knocking on the door, but the woman did not open it. Her dog was barking inside, and it was very alarming. After all, the dog's incessant barking would have woken the woman up. As mentioned earlier, the room where Maria Luisa stayed had 2 entrances. The maids went to the entrance from the courtyard. They kept calling out the woman's name, but all they could hear was the restless barking of the dog. Since no one locked the door, they decided to go inside. Upon entering, they saw bloodstains and Maria Luisa's body wrapped in sheets on the bed. One of the maids called the emergency services and asked for an ambulance and the police. Unfortunately, it was impossible to save the woman, as she died a few hours before that call. This case seemed strange even at the initial stage of the investigation. After all, the hotel was almost empty due to the virus spreading around the globe. Nevertheless, there was always someone from the staff there, but none of them saw or heard anything. The door to Maria Luisa's room had an electronic lock. The security could check every use of the key in their database. It was possible to find out who entered the room and at what time. When the police checked the database, they found that no one except the woman had entered it. The staff had a duplicate key, but no one used it on the night of the crime. But as I said, Maria Luisa's room had 2 entrances. The second entrance to the room was a sliding glass door, and you didn't need an electronic key to open it. Thus, the investigators assumed the perpetrator entered the room through this door. Another version was that Maria Luisa let the criminal inside. The police almost immediately ruled out the possibility that the motive for the crime was theft. The valuables, jewelry, and money in the room remained untouched. It meant the criminal had other goals. When the criminologists examined Maria Luisa's body, they realized what the criminal wanted to get. The woman was naked, and she was fighting for her life. Traces of the criminal's DNA remained under her fingernails. There were bite marks on her face and chest, finger marks on her ankle, bruises from heavy blows on her face, and traces of strangulation on her neck. The reports also say there were injuries in her genital area and seminal fluid. The police saw distinct footprints on the floor next to the bed. The woman's phone was lying next to her, and there were 2 glasses, an open bottle of wine, and water on the table. Forensic experts named head and neck injuries as the cause of death. Experts believed they would get DNA samples from the bites on Maria Luisa's body. However, the results of the examination surprised even the most experienced people. The bites on the woman's chest and cheek contained her saliva, but a person cannot bite their own cheek. It meant that the perpetrator had contaminated the bites on the woman's body with her saliva to mask their DNA. Another oddity was that the perpetrator washed Maria Luisa's dead body before wrapping it in a sheet and putting it on the bed. Perhaps this is how the person who took the woman's life wanted to destroy the evidence left on the body. To some extent, this person succeeded. Maria Luisa's death was an unimaginable challenge for her family, especially for her parents, who were over 80. It wasn't just death. The torture that Maria Luisa went through before her death made her family's grief even more painful. None of the friends, colleagues, and relatives could believe this kind, cheerful, and sympathetic soul was no longer with them. News of the brutal crime that resulted in the death of a well-known anesthesiologist spread quickly across Costa Rica. Therefore, the police wanted to find the person responsible for the death of Maria Luisa as soon as possible. The police started the investigation by checking everyone who worked and lived at the hotel during the same time as Maria Luisa. Although there were CCTV cameras at the hotel, the police couldn't obtain recordings as these cameras weren't working. The hotel was practically empty due to the situation in the world. The lack of customers also affected the number of staff. Maria Luisa wrote to one of her friends that the same person who served the coffee also performed other duties at the hotel. Despite all this, she noted that she was having a great time there. The owner of the hotel was a Dutch businessman, Harry Bodaan. The man was born in The Hague in 1951. In the 1970s, he moved to the United States and started working at Hilton. At some point, he rose to the position of hotel manager. Bodaan became director of the National Press Club in Washington in the early 1980s. Officially, it's a journalists' club, but it's also a place where politicians and presidents from all over the world meet with each other and journalists. Over time, Bodaan gained connections and bought real estate in many countries. One of his possessions was a hotel in Costa Rica, where he lived with his young husband, Yater Danilo Obando. Another guest of the hotel was 38-year-old Teodoro Herrera Martinez. He was in a close relationship with the hotel's owner, Harry Bodaan, and according to the latter, they met in one of the bars where Martinez worked as a stripper. About a year later, Bodaan invited him to work at his hotel, but later fired him due to a lack of customers. However, he allowed Martinez to live in one of the rooms for free. The two men had friendly relations. Martinez periodically carried out personal assignments for Bodaan and some work related to hotel maintenance. Teodoro Martinez became the first suspect after an official police dog led investigators to the door of his room. There were scratches on his back and cheeks, which were probably left by Maria Luisa Cedeño when she was fighting for her life. The police found traces of blood on his shoes, which indicated his involvement in this crime. They arrested Martinez on the first day after the crime and sent him to prison for 6 months. During this time, the authorities had to complete the investigation, establish all the details of this crime, and take the case to court. 5 days after Maria Luisa's death, police arrested a second suspect. It turned out to be 36-year-old Luis Carlos Miranda. The man, just like Teodoro Martinez, was a close friend of Harry Bodaan. When the latter's business was going well, Miranda served as his public relations specialist. He also lived in a hotel but had problems with work. At first, the police did not disclose details of what evidence allowed them to arrest Miranda. However, it soon became known that experts believed Miranda left one of the bites on the victim's body. He, like Martinez, was imprisoned for 6 months. At the beginning of the investigation, the police assumed that Maria Luisa might have invited someone to her room. They made this conclusion based on the fact that the woman ordered 2 glasses to her room. But after interviewing her family and friends, investigators learned that Maria Luisa often took 2 glasses when she drank wine. She used the second one for water. A month after Maria Luisa's death, the police arrested the hotel's owner, Harry Baudin. One of the bites on the woman's body matched his dental cast, and investigators believed that Baudin was one of 3 people involved in the crime. All 3 arrested, of course, denied any involvement in the death of the well-known anesthesiologist. While Miranda and Martinez received 6 months in prison, Harry Baudin was under house arrest due to his health problems. Reports say he had Parkinson's disease and was battling cancer. The police questioned Baudin's husband, Yader Danilo Obando. He denied that Harry could have been involved in Maria Luisa's death, describing in detail the day and night when the crime occurred. That day, as usual, he got up early to help Baudin bathe and get dressed. Then, Obando went to sleep. At 12 p.m., he woke up, ate something, and went to his office on the hotel territory. At that time, his job was to create a website to improve hotel attendance under government restrictions. He spent the day at work, and in the evening, he drank rum with Martinez and Miranda by the pool. According to Obando, he and Baudin were asleep when the latter's phone rang at about 1 a.m. Baudin answered the call. A hotel security guard called Baudin to inform him that Martinez had stolen some beer from the hotel bar and was wandering the corridors. Obando helped Baudin get up, and they went to find Martinez. They found him in shorts and shirtless, with a beer in his hand. Baudin took the beer from his hands and threw it on the floor. He told Martinez to go to bed and think about where he would live next, saying he did not want to see him in his hotel anymore. After that, according to Obando, he and Baudin went to their room. It was the night of the crime. It was strange that none of those who lived and worked at the hotel heard anything, considering that Maria Luisa was severely injured and fought for her life. The authorities believed Yader Danilo Obando was involved in this crime too, but found no evidence to prove it. As already mentioned, Harry Baudin was under house arrest. He had an ankle monitor and was forbidden to leave the hotel and contact other suspects. At the end of 2021, Baudin sold his hotel. His health was deteriorating, and he needed to pay for the services of a lawyer. The new hotel owners did not allow him to stay there, and he had to move. He gave the prosecutor's office his new address, but they marked him as a suspect who could flee the country. Therefore, they lifted his house arrest and placed him in the prison hospital in March 2022. He did not like the care provided there. He called it substandard, claiming human rights violations. The trial started in September 2022. There were more details of the case after each new court session. The prosecutor's office believed Teodoro Martinez was the main culprit. He had scratches on his body, and his DNA was under Maria Luisa's fingernails. In addition, the traces of seminal fluid found at the crime scene also belonged to Martinez. Due to the great deal of people willing to attend the trial and the large number of journalists who covered the case, they postponed the trial several times. The courtroom could not accommodate this many people. Harry Baudin appeared in court in a wheelchair, accompanied by his lawyer, who filed a petition to have his client transferred to house arrest due to health problems. However, the court denied this request. The prosecutor's office presented its version of what happened. They believed that on the night of July 19th to July 20th, 2020, 3 suspects entered Maria Luisa's room and attacked her. They entered through a sliding glass door, knowing no one would see it in the database. Moreover, there were almost no people in the hotel. Based on the fact that no one heard the woman's screams, prosecutors concluded that she was asleep when the 3 of them attacked her. They probably covered her mouth with something so no one would hear anything. Harry Baudin and Miranda left their teeth prints on her body. Presumably, these 2 held Maria Luisa while Martinez brought his sadistic fantasies to life. The exhausted woman fought for her life, but the forces were unequal. They beat her severely and then strangled her, eventually breaking her cervical vertebrae. All 3 men knew they had enough time to cover their tracks. They washed her body, moved it to the bed, and covered it with a sheet. They smeared the bite marks on Maria Luisa's body with her saliva so that experts could not find foreign DNA there. However, each defendant's lawyer had a different strategy. Baudon's defense argued that their client underwent knee surgery shortly before Maria Luisa's death and had difficulty walking, let alone participating in the crime. They postponed the trial again because the expert witness who was supposed to testify about the teeth marks on the victim's body had left the country. Miranda's lawyer invited a Spanish orthodontist from Madrid. The woman said the teeth marks on the skin weren't sufficient evidence. Her testimony was supposed to last 2 days, but she returned to Spain a day later because she felt intimidated by the prosecutor's office. The latter questioned her competence and wanted to bring her to justice because she was not accredited by a professional association in Costa Rica and therefore illegally posed as an expert. According to the conclusions reached by the Ministry of Justice and Peace, the crime could not have been committed by only one person. Hence, they insisted that all 3 men were involved in the case. Miranda's defense questioned the theory that more than one person was involved in the crime. The lawyers criticized the shortcomings of the examination conducted by the judicial authorities and pointed to inconsistencies that should have been the basis for Miranda's acquittal. During one of the trials, the court heard the statement from the lead investigator who handled the case. He said it took them more than 5 hours to inspect the crime scene thoroughly. They realized that the criminals washed Maria Luisa's body before moving it to the bed by applying luminol in the bathroom. Since there were no marks on the floor of the hotel room, but there were finger marks on the victim's ankles, experts believed that at least 2 people carried Maria Luisa's body onto the bed. As for Teodoro Martinez, there was more irrefutable evidence against him. During the trial, everyone learned that Maria Luisa's blood was on the inside and outside of his shoes. It could mean he was barefoot at the time of the crime and stained his feet with blood before putting on his shoes. They also found blood on his phone and watch. Moreover, his DNA, including seminal fluid, was on the victim's body. Therefore, unlike the other 2 defendants, Martinez could not claim he was not involved in the crime. Based on all this, Martinez admitted there was intimate contact between them, but he denied he had done everything else. During the investigation, it became known that Harry Baudon had knee surgery at the same clinic where Maria Luisa worked. But she wasn't the only anesthesiologist at the clinic, and there was no evidence that she and Baudon had ever met. During the testimony, the man also denied he knew Maria Luisa. According to him, he found out that she was staying at his hotel only after he received a call about a dead woman in one of the rooms. During one of the interrogations, they asked Baudon why the security cameras were not working in his hotel. There were cameras, but they didn't work because of funding problems. We had about 5 or 6 low-quality cameras, and gradually, they all broke down, Baudon explained. He also said there were problems with the electricity in the hotel, but the maintenance staff dealt with these problems. There was no evidence other than bite marks on the victim's body to prove Harry Baudon and Luis Carlos Miranda's involvement in the crime. Therefore, in the end, it all came down to whether dental prints can be considered irrefutable evidence. While hearing Miranda's case, the judge made several clarifications, including pointing out that dental evidence, that is, the match of the teeth pattern with bite marks on the victim's body, could not be considered because no one read the accused man his rights before taking a sample. Although there was some evidence against Baudon, the judge pointed out that it was impossible to determine whether his dental cast matched the bite mark. Forensic experts said the analysis of the teeth allowed them to exclude everyone who was in the hotel on the night of Maria Luisa's death, except Miranda and Baudon. But at the same time, there was a possibility that someone else had left the marks on the victim's body. It meant that the evidence was not convincing to the judge. In April 2023, the court found Teodoro Martinez guilty of taking Maria Luisa Cedeño's life, sentencing him to 50 years in prison. The court also acquitted Harry Baudon and Luis Carlos Miranda due to doubts about their guilt. However, the story did not end there. In October 2023, the Costa Rican Court of Appeal ruled to review the case against Baudon and his 2 co-defendants with new judges. As evidence, The Costa Rican prosecutor's office used the alleged teeth marks of Bodan and Miranda on the victim's body. The prosecutor's office wanted to try to convince other judges of the authenticity of the teeth marks as evidence. The decision of the Court of Appeal did not come as a surprise to Bodan. Given how the investigation by the prosecutor's office has failed and how many inconsistencies this case has, I am not surprised, he said. He also accused the female prosecutor of bias, saying that she was abusing this case to advance her career. Bodan, who had already left Costa Rica, now lives in the Netherlands. Even if the court in Costa Rica decides to detain him, he has nothing to fear because there is no extradition treaty between the two countries, and he's not going back to Costa Rica. Here is what he said in an interview with Dutch journalists. "Given my terrible experience with the Costa Rican legal system, and the fact that I paid a high price in the form of almost 3 years in prison, it is not in my interest to go back. There are too many policies there guided by public opinion. The country has an outdated legal system, there is corruption, and its mass media is at the level of a banana republic. I can't take any more risks at my age and with my illnesses." Thus, this case has not yet come to an end.